Good morning, everyone. Not surprisingly, we spent in the meeting with the President a good amount of time talking about the issue of financial regulation. As all of you know, it appears as if the bipartisan talks have broken down as the Democratic negotiators kind of pull back. And where we are now, if we're left with the Chairman Dodd bill that came out of the Banking Committee on a straight party line vote, is that it's a bill that actually guarantees future bailouts of Wall Street banks. In fact, if you look at it carefully, it will lead to endless taxpayer bailouts of Wall Street banks. That is clearly not the direction the American people would like for us to go, and also not the direction Senate Republicans would like to go. So I think the solution to this is for the bipartisan talks to resume between Chairman Dodd and Ranking Member Shelby and others, and hope that we can get back together and address this very important issue on a bipartisan basis, which I sort of naively thought we were heading in that direction until the strings were kind of pulled on the Democratic negotiators toward the end of last week. So I have hope that we'll get back to the table and come up with something that can pass on a bipartisan basis.
Mr. Leader?
The American people are continuing to ask the question, where are the jobs? And when you look at this financial services bill, my concern is that it's going to protect the biggest banks in America and harm the smallest banks. That the big banks will get bigger and the smaller banks are going to be gone. And at a time when small businesses are looking for loans, I think the bill that came through the House, at a minimum, will make it more difficult for community banks to provide loans to small businesses. In addition to that, the American people are looking for jobs, but they don't see Washington doing anything to help the private sector create jobs. It's all about more government, bigger programs here, and I just think that the uncertainty that continues to exist in the country about policies that are coming out of this administration and this Congress are throwing a wet blanket on employers and putting them in a position that they're scared to death of what's going to happen next.
Senator McConnell, Senator Corker, who tried to negotiate with Senator Dodd for a while, has said that your side, Republicans, made a mistake by not making a deal in committee, and that you all had pulled back from that, doing that. Does he have a point?
Well, I think Senator Corker has spent an enormous amount of time on this and desperately wanted it to come together. He also shares my view as to why it broke down. And you might ask him that question. And the reason it broke down was because Chairman Dodd was pulled back, Chairman Blanche Lincoln was pulled back at the end of last week. You all were writing about word from the White House that this was a great opportunity to stuff the Republicans, to make a political statement. All of you were writing that. You were accurate. So my message to the President, quite simply, is let's get back to the table and see if we can't get this job done. A lot of people have been working on this in good faith, and Bob Corker's been at the top of the list.
Before that point, when it was still in committee, did Republicans make a mistake by not making a deal?
You can go back and second guess every step of the way. This is a big, complicated subject, another massive bill that we believe in its current form provides an endless taxpayer bailout of Wall Street firms. Now, that is exactly the opposite of what the American people expected us to do. So we have serious differences of opinion here. The way to resolve them is to get back together.
What do you want to take out of the bill? What provisions do you
If this
take out?
coddles the big banks like that and basically lets them take any risk they want with a bailout coming if they fail, why are the big banks working so hard against it?
Well, the community banks in Kentucky are against it too. I mean, they've managed to unify opposition to it. But look, from our point of view, it's not a question of the banks, whether they're big or small. It's a question of the taxpayers. I mean, none of us ever again want to have a situation where the taxpayers' money is used to bail out large failed institutions. We don't want to ever do that again. And it's the view of all of the people I've been talking to, who really know the subject well, that we are taking that experience in the fall of 2008 and institutionalizing it, setting up in perpetuity the potential for additional taxpayer bailouts of large institutions. That is clearly the wrong way to go. We ought to get back to the table and see if we can fix it.
Senator McConnell,
How did the president respond to that?
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak for the president. I'm giving you my view. And I think the key here is to get the negotiators back to the table. That has broken down. I think since all of you wrote about it, you know why it broke down. They were pulled back. The Democrats were pulled back by the White House. And the impression one would get from that is that they thought this was a great political issue for them and they wanted to try to jam us. Well, it's not a great political issue for them. The bill that they've reported out of committee is an endless taxpayer bailout of Wall Street banks. And that is not a political winner, and it's also the wrong thing to do for the country.
But how do you push back against this perception that you are doing the baiting of the large banks? You know, there was a report that you guys met with hedge fund managers in New York. Isn't a lot of people are viewing this particular line of argument, this bailout argument,
well,
as
you could talk to the community bankers in Kentucky who are. But I'm telling you about the community bankers in Kentucky. This is not everybody.
Have you talked with other people other than community bankers?
Well, sure. We talk to people all the time. I'm not denying that. What's wrong with that? I mean, that's how we learn how people feel about legislation. But the community bankers in Kentucky, the little guys, the Main Street guys, are overwhelmingly opposed to this bill.
Folks who say that this is just spin to deflect attention from the fact that you're representing the large banks.
I say that that's inaccurate. Yeah.
Mr. Boehner or Mr. McConnell, we learned today that retail sales are up. The GDPs grew 5.6% in the fourth quarter, 3% estimated in the quarter that just ended. The Dow's up some 70% from its lows. Does the president deserve credit for any of that? Is that a recovery?
Well, the American people are still asking the question, where are the jobs? And yes, there are some bright spots in the economy. Things are getting better. But when you look at the value of homes, continues to be at all-time lows. When you look at the unemployment number and those who have dropped out of seeking work, there's still a lot of concern out there. And the American people want to know what Washington's going to do. It's not about growing the size of government, which is really what Washington has done over the last year. And until we get more money back into the hands of American families and small businesses, we're not going to see the kind of recovery that all of us want.
Would recovery be what it is without the president's program? Would it have been successful such as it is without the president's program?
The president who said when he signed the stimulus bill that unemployment would not exceed 8%. We have unemployment near 10%. It was the president who said, when I sign this bill, it'll create jobs immediately, yet nearly 4 million Americans have lost their jobs. That's why Americans are asking, where are the jobs?
Senator McConnell, do you think that the president will win any Republican votes?